So again, just all these little nuggets being played in my head. And I'm like, you know what? If we can just get one property every year in 20 to 30 years, I could have one paid off, and then boom, every year compounding after that is just being paid off and all cash flow. So I was looking at it initially as a long-term play. I'm like, man, I might be able to retire 10 years early.
This is Brandon Turner, and you are listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast.
Welcome to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. Are you trying to get out of debt, invest, or just not sure where to start? Then this is the place for you. We discuss different ways to get out of the rat race and build your wealth. Join us on this wild ride to financial freedom.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cavaggioni, and today's guest is Kyle Root. So, Kyle, I am super excited to have you on, especially with what we were talking about pre-recording about what you're doing at a very young age, man, at least to be where you're at today. So I'm super excited. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, Mike, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Kyle, I want to just knock this off right off the bat, start this thing the same way we start every podcast episode. And we want to know more about you. So if you could share a little bit about yourself, share your background, your story. Who is Kyle Root?
Yeah, man. So I grew up, born and raised in Michigan. Grew up in Petoskey, Michigan, which is a small area. Was born there, ended up moving about maybe an hour and 15 minutes north. So if anyone's familiar with Michigan, you got the Upper Peninsula. You could basically walk out my back door and be close to Canada. We were north. And again, grew up in a small town. Was how to put it kindly, your classic jock, if you will. Didn't take school seriously. Didn't get great grades. Didn't get terrible grades. Just right down the middle, just enough to keep playing sports and plowing away. So that was my claim to fame, was being an athlete. And a lot of great lessons came from it. And I was lucky enough to go to college, played football in college at a small Division II school. And again, great lessons through there. Wasn't a great student, again, in college until about my junior year. And I started off in construction. So that was my background, was in construction management. That's what I went to school for. And I got my first job as a freshman, which was painting. And then my next year I was pouring concrete. And for anyone that's poured concrete or anyone that's been around it, or obviously you might have a lot of like construction or realtors or obviously investors that listen to this show, and they've seen the hard work that goes into concrete. So did that for a summer, and I realized I needed to start getting better grades because I wasn't getting any internships. Everyone around me was getting internships. They were getting construction management internships, making good money. And I was out here laboring. And I was like, all right, Kyle, we got to quit playing like we're going to the NFL here, buddy. We're playing D2 football. It's over, man. Ended up taking school serious. I got my grades together, got the next 2 years, got good internships, ended up graduating. Fast forwarding, worked in a construction management role for a industrial construction company, working on power plants and refineries, traveling all over the U.S. And like many people, you start working for a few years, and things just weren't clicking for me. I just couldn't wrap my head around working till 55 and 60, and then hopefully things go well enough that I have a good retirement. And really, at this point, real estate was there in my head. It was a little nugget that I was thinking about. And that's just how it got kicked off for me. I'm sure we'll go more into the real estate side of things, but like many, I couldn't wrap my head around how I could be there for the next couple of years, especially 25 years plus. So started reading on real estate, gaining knowledge, ended up jumping into the game, and just got scaling from there.
All right, awesome. So Kyle, let's talk about you jumping into the game, right? So the first thing I want to ask you actually is, what was the catalyst or the thing that kind of flipped the switch for you to say, hey, I'm not sure I want to be in the construction business anymore. I want to get into real estate and eventually leave this. So what was that part, or what was that like for you?
Yeah, so the first and even investing trigger in my mind was, and again, I grew up in a small area. My parents did the best they could, but finances and investments, even outside of real estate, wasn't a talk. Like a company match and investing in the stock market. First of all, what even is a 401k? We know there's company matches, but what's backing a 401k? I didn't know any of this stuff. And when I graduated, my brother had 3 or 4 years of experience in the workforce working for corporate America's engineers. I had to call him and ask him, like, hey, what am I supposed to do with 401k? Or should I be putting money away here? What about all these insurances? A lot of things I just wasn't educated on. And this was at an age I should have been. And long story short, I started reading investment books and entrepreneurship, business. Like even in college, I would try flipping phones. Like I'd buy a phone off Amazon, crack screen, fix it, sell it for profit. Luckily, that wasn't a lucrative business. So I soon found real estate. But all the books and research I was doing kept leading back to real estate, even business owners, people that I was realizing in different areas of entrepreneurship and business, all came back somehow to real estate. So started reading books, making that transition from be a really hard worker to some nuggets starting to shift. Hey, Kyle, maybe you are a business owner. Maybe you can be an entrepreneur. And yeah, I did that for about 2 years. So from 24 to about 25, 26 was the time frame. I call it like information gathering period, where I was just reading books, listening to podcasts, going to some local meetups. And at that point, I think I had all the information I could. The only piece I was missing was execution at that point. So I went my first investment was a house hack. So again, just all these little nuggets being played in my head. And I'm like, you know what, if we can just get one property every year in 20 to 30 years, I could have one paid off. And then boom, every year compounding after that is just being paid off in all cash flow. So I was looking at it initially as a long-term play. I'm like, man, I might be able to retire 10 years early. So I ended up house hacking my first duplex, and side-by-side duplex, lived in one side, rented out the other.
When was this?
This was in 2020, end of 2019, early 2020.
Okay, perfect. That's when I bought my first duplex.
Nice.
End of 2019, beginning of 2020.
Yeah.
And then the world ended.
Yeah.
Please, I don't want to interrupt you. I was just curious when you started that first one.
That was it. So yeah, house hacked my first one, and I was like, man, this is great. I'm basically living for free. I was paying $200 or something, utilities and other things, garbage, but I was like paying $200 and $150 out of pocket. I'm like, this is incredible. And then I rented out the other side, fixed it up. I moved out, fixed up mine, rented it out. And then I heard about this cash out refinance thing. And obviously 20 crazy things happened in 2020. I bought the property at 190. And in a matter of 6 to 8 months, it was worth 255. Luckily, I was able to figure out that, hey, you can actually fix up a property, do a cash out refinance, get your money back, still cash flow, and just move that capital in another property. So I figured that out early on. And I invest solely in the Midwest. And for people that invest in the Midwest, you can go buy, and I buy in Green Bay, Wisconsin, Milwaukee. You can go to Milwaukee or like a Detroit or a Chicago and pick up a decent house for 60, 70,000, and it'll rent for 11 to 1,200. And like people would dream of that kind of cash flow, and it's cheap. So for me, I was able to keep saving up 20% down, and we were buying $60,000 single family homes that were renting for $950 to $1,000. So we're buying for cheap, fixing them up, doing a cash out refinance. We kept just building this capital. Yeah. And we just kept bankrolling and building capital. And then we started, I guess, you eventually run out of money. Like not every single property goes great, right? There was a lot of learning lessons along the way. So I did start losing some capital along the way. And that's what ultimately brought me to having to figure something out, which led me to start going the hard money route, which is ultimately what helped me scale.
Yeah. So you were doing the BRRRR method, right?
Correct.
Did you even know that's what it was called when you were doing it?
I did it. And to be honest, right around that time, it was happening in motion with me starting to listen to Bigger Pockets. And that was a time like Brandon Turner and all those, like Brandon Turner, David Green were on together. To be honest, while I was listening to the BRRRR strategy and the method, I was like, okay, I can do that with my place. So I was learning and doing it at the same time.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. You know what I like about what you were sharing with your story is that you did a lot of research. You knew what you wanted to do. And you even said it, and I love the way that you put it. You were like, I had everything together. I was ready to go. The only thing left was execution. So I talk about this a lot with some folks because there's a lot of things you can get right and a lot of things you can get wrong. But it doesn't matter. Like you can learn as much as you want to learn. You can know all the right people. You could have all the right partners. But if you don't actually execute and take action, you're never going to go anywhere. You're just going to be stuck in analysis paralysis all day. So I really love the way leading up to it, when you decided, hey, I'm ready, you executed and took action. And then it seems like you took massive action, right? Because looking at your bio here, you went from zero and then you started house hacking to where you're at now. You started in 2020. It is now 2023. How many units do you have?
We're at 74 right now.
That's
74,
fantastic.
yeah.
That's fantastic, man. And you got to update your bio, man. It says 70. I
Well,
guess no, you
it's
did
ever
0 to
changing,
70
man.
so
Yeah, it's ever changing. We were actually a little bit more, but we had some good opportunity. And again, when you scale like that, you're going to pick up some bad eggs. And
yeah.
I was buying everything. If I could cash flow $100, I was buying it. And that was all with hard money. But yeah, right now we're actually looking at doing some trading, like getting rid of some bad to bring in some good. So we might end the year, I don't know, we could end the year just at 80 and only add technically 10 units, but we've got some bad eggs. And in the Midwest, with basements and obviously the snow and things like that, there's lots of water damage. There's just some different things that we go through here that honestly weren't expected, and you don't really read them in a lot of these books. Yeah, just getting rid of some bad eggs right now and bringing in some better ones.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now, obviously, there came a time, like you said, where you ran out of money and you started going and using hard money. But what about when it comes to using like traditional lenders and traditional mortgages, the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac? You're limited there too, right? So did you do anything else creative to finance some of these properties, like DSCR loans or anything like that?
Yes. So to be honest, once I stopped, I basically house hacked and put 20% down, did the BRRRR method, and I had money coming in up until like maybe 15 units. And at that point, I was doing it so fast that at that point I left my job because I knew, one, I was
Sure.
single at the time. So it was like, hey, we're going for it or not. So I was able to leave at that point. But me, again, being young and not doing the research, and again, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but I didn't even think about the possible repercussions of not having W-2 income. I didn't even think about it.
You left
So
your
all my
W-2 when you were at 15 units?
15 units, yeah.
Wow.
And
Okay.
along this time, we did maybe two, and I say we, my wife now, but we did maybe one flip. So I just saw it. And we were dating at the time. And at this point, which was huge, if I was married and had two kids, I would have never done this, nor I would ever advise anyone to do it. But I found a method and I thought, man, I can just keep doing this. So I never really did anything creative, overly creative. I strictly used hard money. Sometimes I do have two people that I would bring in. And this is what I did is basically I screwed myself with loans. I left my W-2 income, couldn't show any income, 15
Yeah.
rentals in the Midwest. You don't cash flow enough. You don't have any tax returns on those rentals, or there's no seasoning really on them. So what I ended up doing is I'd go to a hard money lender. They would use me in my LC. And when I'd go fix them up and I'd do a cash out refinance, sometimes I had to bring in strictly people we would create an LC and I would just bring them in so they could show a W-2 and potentially more liquidity, better credit score, whatever it might be. So that is maybe a creative piece that I did
You would
utilize.
bring them in to be like the key principal, right? Like,
exactly.
Hey, look at what, here's their income statement and what they're doing, and they're tied to this as well.
Yep, correct.
Now, for the people that you brought in like that, did they get any type of return on being part of this investment, or was this just, hey, they were hooking you up?
No, yeah. Unfortunately, that would be great if they didn't get anything out of it. I gave them a very small portion of equity. And again, for them, we did it all through an LC, and we didn't do the traditional lending. So really didn't overly affect them as taking out personal debt. So yeah, you just gave them a small portion of equity and they were happy.
Okay. Oh, man. Good deal. All right. That's a lot to take in. That is definitely a very creative way. It's actually, I think, the first time I heard of somebody doing it this way. So when we talk about creative financing, that's definitely creative financing, Kyle. That's
sure.
I think this is a first for me, bringing people into the LLC for their W-2s. Now, I've seen people brought in because of their net worth. And like normally you'll see this on like multifamily deals, like some of those larger scale deals. But man, that is pretty interesting. I like that. I think my listeners are going to get a takeaway a lot from that too. Speaking of, I want to go back to this action taking piece, right? Because a lot of times I feel like a lot of people do get stuck in that analysis paralysis, and they'll sit here and they'll watch all the YouTube videos. They'll listen to all the podcasts. They'll hire a coach. They'll pay for a mentorship program, but then they don't take action. So why do you think like a lot of people struggle to take this A-word action and make some moves?
Yeah. So I think, and again, it's going to sound very, everyone's probably heard it 1,000 times, but it's fear. And usually it's not what I've seen. And like, I do some like one-on-one coaching and help people, and everything that I've seen helping them or just like even local business meetups and talking to people that want to get started, or even real estate investors I meet wherever out at coffee. It seems to be they fear failing somebody else, not even necessarily them. It's just the fear of potentially other people thinking down on themselves. What if I have a very good paying job, insurance, 401k, everything that I could possibly have? If I start talking to people about real estate and they're like, wow, you don't know. And right now it's such a crazy time. There's people that don't own real estate that are talking about, oh, wait for the crash, interest rates. Come on, none of us really know. Like deep down, none of us really know exactly what's going to happen on the exact date. What I've found is that people fear the rejection of other people rather than just solely doing it for themselves. And usually if you get a mentor or coach or do enough information, your first investment, there are thousands of ways to mitigate the risk. So there's the only thing that to be feared about is just literally not doing it, not taking that action.
Sure. Okay. No, I like that. Now, Kyle, I want to ask you because we're saying we a lot, and you had mentioned that it's you and your wife, but do you have anyone else on your team? Like I know you haven't done joint ventures, right? You haven't done syndication,
Yeah.
but what does like your team structure look like?
Yeah, so we have four employees. It's actually not my wife is not an employee. It's me. We have two acquisition specialists in two different locations, and then we have a project manager that oversees all construction projects. We also do like flips too, so it's not just our rentals that we're buying. We just started buying some more flips. But yeah, he oversees not only our construction locally, but project managers that do a lot of our renovations as well.
Okay. So you have two acquisition managers, right? So what do they do for acquisition? Are they doing like cold calls, mailers? Like what is like the strategy that's been working for you?
Yeah, again, oddly enough, it's very simple. We've bought 90% of literally probably 90 to 95% of my properties off the MLS. And it's all places where we can add a bedroom, add a bathroom, where, yeah, I look at here where I buy, we look for 2 bed, 1 bath, 1,100 square feet. I know there's an extra bedroom or bathroom in there.
Okay.
Luckily, I've got a lot of good construction experience, so I do look at certain things, but yeah, we're on a pretty large scale as far as square miles that we cover. We don't just look at, hey, we want to be in this neighborhood on this street. We're pretty spread out, to be honest. And I'm buying in areas that, of 10,000 people. They're a little bit smaller markets that that other people aren't. So we've bought, everything's off the MLS.
Nice. That's something you don't hear too often either, with especially
You don't.
for somebody that's flipping or doing like the BRRRR strategy, man. So that's fantastic. Now, what about, so if you're doing most of the stuff off the MLS, right, and you're looking for properties that you can do some value add, right? You're going to add a bathroom or a bedroom, right? And by doing that, of course, increase the value of what it could be rented for. Now, do you run into any issues when it comes to permitting and different things like that, especially when it comes to construction, like having to any addition? Like, that's another thing. Do you do like additions on some of the homes? Or are you taking what's already there with the bones in place and like adding another room inside?
Yeah, adding another room inside. So we don't basically anything structural for the most part, unless it's already pre-damaged, we stay away from. So yeah, it's adding what's already inside of the four walls.
Okay, perfect. Now, so with that, the permitting is probably not as crazy as like having to do an addition on the house. But have you ever run into any issues with that, with getting stuff back in time to start a project, or it's delayed you at all?
Yeah, we run into it all the time. We run into issues with the city, whether it's from even the previous owner. If you don't do your research, I guess one example would be that we bought a upper lower duplex. In the listing, it said it was an upper lower duplex. It was like built like an upper lower duplex, everything zoned residential. We purchased it. We submitted our permits, and it was zoned IU. And then here, that's industrial, and industrial can't be changed out of its current state, like what it was intended for. And this property is zoned single family. It's just, yeah, we've ran into it, and that screwed us. The whole thing was built like a duplex, and we had to remodel it. And that was a huge unforeseen expense.
Did you
run into it.
Did you have to turn that into an industrial space, like an office building?
No. So it's either industrial or residential. So it has to be like single family dwelling, but yeah, which is what his intent was.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I ask about the permitting and stuff because where I live at in Hawaii, especially on Oahu, yeah, we're looking 12 to 18 months to get a permit. It's insane.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And then like other places, like there's other people that I know that do projects on the Big Island and stuff, and theirs takes 6 to 9 months out there. And that's fast for us. So it's pretty crazy out here. So that's why I was asking, because different
we're
markets
days. Permits for days.
Yeah. Okay. Right on, man. Now, for you personally, like we talked about people taking action, and that's one of the biggest hurdles people have to take over. What are some obstacles that you have faced, especially with scaling from 0 to 70 in a 2-year period? What are some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's so many. And I think about the ones that were most important. And believe it or not, the most important one to overcome were 100% not real estate or business related. They were related to my emotions, how I let other people's emotions dictate my actions rather than my own confidence and sometimes things take courage. When other people's emotions, like a lender tells me, Kyle, we can't lend to you, rather than me putting my head down and crying, rather I should be out there just being like, okay, that's one step closer to the next person that will. And I think it pushed me to be extremely creative. I think general, again, was not real estate or business related, but rather controlling my emotions. And again, I wasn't having these 5-year-old freakouts, panicking and thinking the world coming down.
It sounds like a lot of mindset stuff, right? Shifting that mindset out of that employee mindset to the entrepreneur mindset, right? And business owner, which you did when you left your W-2 job. You forced yourself into it, right?
Yes, exactly. And there was no other option. And I
at
personally,
that point, it was a done deal. Yeah,
for sure. And I remember actually, I called my boss the day I put in my 2 weeks. It was a Monday. I just got done working out, and I was like, you know what? It's time. And when I called my boss, I told him I'm putting my 2 weeks in. He actually
you talked to your wife first, though, right? Before you called your boss?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
For
okay. Because
sure.
you were actually, like, I was just working out and said, I'm calling. This is
no.
Okay.
Actually, I got done working out and then called her. Like, we were just talking, and I'm like, wait, I could just flip a house and again, she was my girlfriend at the time, but yeah. And she's, yeah, you could. And she's the best too. Cause any idea, I'm like, I'm going for this. And she's, yeah, do it, go for it. And so she's extremely supportive in that route, but
that's good.
Yeah.
Attention, fellow real estate investors. I know you're tired of ineffective marketing strategies that leave your lead generation feeling like a bust. Well, I've got a great solution for you. I've teamed up with Ballpoint Marketing to bring you a fresh approach to growing your business. With their handwritten direct mail marketing, your business will stand out from the crowd. Their amazing writing machines will craft personalized messages for each of your potential clients, making a lasting impression and increasing the likelihood of them responding to your message. They even make pen smudge marks to add to the authenticity. And for those of you that are driving for dollars, one of their most popular offers are handwritten door hangers. Placed directly on the front door, these door hangers show a potential seller how serious you are. With Ballpoint Marketing, you can trust their marketing strategy will be both effective and unique, just like your real estate business. Use my coupon code AVGJOE for an exclusive discount. Don't miss out on this opportunity to grow your real estate business and generate leads. Click the link in my bio for more. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Mike Cav from Average Joe Finances. Just want to talk to you today about Prep Agent. If you're interested in learning how to become a real estate agent and being able to pass the test on your first try, check out Prep Agent at www.prepagent.com. Use code AVGJOE, that's Average Joe, AVGJOE, to get an additional 20% off. Let's get back to today's episode. All right, right on, man. Okay, with all that being said, obviously, it sounds like your mindset was the biggest hurdle you had to overcome, and you managed to shift it. Sounds like pretty easily, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot more struggle in that for people. So it might sound easy as we're sitting here having this conversation, and my listeners are like, oh, yeah, he figured out what he wanted to do and he just attacked it. Yes, but at the same time, all that behind the scenes stuff, all that work you had to put into it, like what kind of ways did you educate yourself? I know you had mentioned you started listening to some podcasts like Bigger Pockets and stuff. Are there any other things that you did to like really push yourself down this rabbit hole of real estate to say, that this is what I want to do?
Yeah. And I'll tie this in, which goes back to what ultimately lit a fire for me. And that was like going back. I forgot what I was saying there for a second, but yeah, I was talking about when I called my boss. And when I called my boss and I told him that I was quitting, he told me that he's seen this before and that he basically told me that you're welcome back here anytime. Like I was already going to fail. Right. That was a huge thing for me rather than being like, hey, Kyle, good luck, go get them. And I think everyone deals
that's a
with this.
motivator right there.
For sure, to say that he's had people quit on him before and they end up coming back. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to.
Dude,
That was a huge fire for me. For sure. And yeah, it was not. There was times that were brutal. Honestly, there was one time, it was probably my fifth property out of my W-2 job. And I ran the numbers wrong. And I had to actually do the renovation. Again, I was lucky enough that I had some construction background, but I legitimately was out of money. Everything was capped. I had used all my escrow money from my hard money lender. Everything. We were waiting on refis to close. It was like we were down to it. And honestly, I don't know if I've ever told anyone this story on a podcast. So this is cool. But yeah, I was sitting on a paint bucket, man. And I remember just like crying because I'm like, it's over. I literally remember playing like I can call, get my job back. It's a good job. It's $100,000 job. I was making good money. But yeah, I just remember sitting there crying and shut everything off. And I was just like, you know what, Kyle? If we can take this one day, one decision, one email, one problem at a time, we stand a chance. If we can just take one, if I ultimately did run out of money and the refis didn't close and the flip didn't actually go through, I was going back to the work anyways, but I had some time. I had about 30 days for things to work out. I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take this one day at a time. We're going to appreciate the small things. I ate food. I have a house. I have a vehicle. I have 20 properties at the time. We're just going to take it one step at a time. And we took it one step at a time. And basically 2 years later, a year and a half later, we're still in the fight. Yeah, I just think that there's a fire in everybody. And I think sometimes you just have to dig deep for that fire. But when it's there, it can be easily relit. You're never too old to relight it. Yeah. And that was just, honestly, that was one of the greatest things someone ever told me, is that I was going to fail. Yeah. And it just kept it going.
Yeah, I love that, man. You took that to keep that fire burning, man. Those words were your Kindle no matter what.
For sure.
I love that, dude. That's motivating right there, especially for my listeners right now. If they're like new and they're getting ready to start investing, man, hearing a story like yours is going to be something that kind of pumps them up. So I really like that. Now, again, like we talked about earlier, you scaled very quickly. And I'd like to think at the beginning, especially since you were house hacking, you were probably managing on your own, right?
Correct.
Did you shift to using property managers, or are you still doing that all yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm using property managers at this point. And
Awesome.
That's exactly it. I personally, with my skill set, and that's the other thing, I was very aware of what I was good at and not good at. I wasn't good with tenants. I didn't have the patience. I wasn't right in the right manner, what I needed, what tenants deserve, and ultimately what the asset deserved. But yeah, they were huge in me scaling, because the right property manager, they can renovate 2 to 4 units in a couple months for you. And at the time, we were still building our personal construction team. So they were huge for me. And yeah, at this point, I wouldn't be where I am without property managers.
Okay, awesome. So speaking of things that you can't live without, is there any tools or CRM systems that you use that are like, these are my must-haves?
To be honest, I don't use a whole lot. Again, if I had a big cold calling team, luckily we buy everything off the MLS. So for me, honestly,
I'm talking like to track like your rent rolls. Do you use like QuickBooks, or do you have Google spreadsheet or anything like that?
Yeah, great question. So I actually hired a software developer, and we're working on building out a software that tracks all of that right now, because that was actually the problem that I had. We were like many, you start off with a nice little spreadsheet, one address, but that address line, when it keeps growing, the spreadsheet keeps growing, and it gets to be a lot. So yeah, I came across a guy. He basically referred me to this software developer. He charges a reasonable price, and we jumped in on it. And yeah, we're working through basically how we want it to look, print the reports we need, look at our cash flow, our global cash flow, all that stuff. So yeah, I haven't used anything. I went from basically Excel to working with a software developer.
Nice, man. Are you looking to, is it going to be just for you, or are you going to look to make this like a public thing? You know, that if somebody else said, hey, I really like what you put together here, I'd like to use it too. Is that going to be available in the future?
Yeah. So one of the things we're working on is first, obviously, seeing if it fits what I need, and we're going to make our critiques. But yeah, we've had conversations back and forth about getting it out there because I know tons of landlords and even early investors that would love to just look at something like that to help track their expenses, their revenue, all that stuff.
Yeah, 100%, man. I'm interested in it too. It sounds like really good
What do you
software.
use?
So what I was using back in the day was cozy.co, which
Yeah,
is
I
now
heard that.
switched to apartments.com or whatever. But
Yeah,
Stess is another one that I was using as well. But yeah, I like things a little bit more simple. And I like to be able to pull up everything all on one dashboard at once and print out whatever I need to print out. If I need to see my expenses, I need to see what I'm actually making this month. Having everything in one place, I think, is phenomenal.
gotcha. Gotcha. I was just curious.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let me see. So we talked about the CRM systems and tools that you use that you can't live without. Now, what about you yourself, Kyle? Do you offer any types of services to help real estate investors out?
I do. Yeah, I offer a one-on-one coaching program, and I talk to a lot of other successful coaches and just what other investors are looking for. And there's a lot of people out there selling courses and they're making tons of money at it. They're making tons of money at selling courses. But one of the things that was important to me is I wanted to be interconnected with someone else's success and to really help an individual. Yeah, a lot of people say you can help more people if you help a group, but I want it like the one-on-one connection to be like intricate details. Sometimes it's hard to cultivate a plan for mass groups of people that helps everyone. And for me, that's why I went the one-on-one route.
You want to
Just
invest in that person, right? You're
for
investing
sure.
your time and energy into them. So you want to help them succeed. Now that's great because there are a lot of times out there you see all these group coaching calls and this and that. Like for my financial coaching, I do the same thing. I do one-on-one and we break
Nice.
it down like that. It's a lot more intimate and you can really learn a lot about each other and make sure that they are the right fit. Because sometimes in a group setting, people get in that herd mentality and they're just saying yes because everyone else is saying yes when really they're uncomfortable with something and they might be scared to say something. No, I can definitely appreciate that. All right, Kyle. So yeah, I wanted to ask about that because I want to bring us into the final round now. And we're going to get to a little bit more about some of the services you offer here at the end of the podcast as well. But first things first, the final round here, I'm going to ask you the same 4 questions I ask everybody that comes on the show. And it's going to help us get a good idea of how you are when you get stuck in a tough situation or put under pressure, which I'm pretty sure I already know how this is going to go because you're crushing it, man. So if you're ready to go, we'll get this party
Let's
started.
do it.
All right, Kyle. So the first question I'm going to ask you is what's the biggest mistake you've ever made in real estate?
Man, this is embarrassing to say sometimes, but I purchased a triplex and did not look at any of the mechanicals. I looked at 100% of all the cosmetics that it needed, but didn't. When I went in the basement, I looked at the electrical panel, didn't see if there was a hot water heater, didn't see the HVAC unit, and I
Oh, no.
purchased it. Yeah, I purchased it, man. And that was basically 50, 60 grand out the door.
Were they broken or just not there?
They weren't even there.
Oh, no.
Weren't even there.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
man.
we were just on a roll. We were on a roll buying tons of properties. And this is again at the time where it was just unit count. We were all it was almost like chaotic how fast we were growing. And again, we were flipping properties. So we had some extra money at this time. But yeah, there's no excuse for something like that. So that's by far the worst mistake I've made.
Yeah. Oh, man. I appreciate the transparency there. And especially with the fact that you had that high going, right? That dopamine hit because you were just crushing it. And you're like, yeah, let's just keep going. Let's get one more. Like you were pulling a whole DJ Khaled, right? And
Yeah.
but this time complacency, right? Complacency kills. And
Yeah.
you learned a lesson there. So I appreciate that, man. Okay. The next question kind of ties into that. And it's what is something that you've learned, Kyle, that you wish you knew when you first got started?
That systems, when everyone's pushing systems and methods, they're not going to up until you get experience, because I think a lot of people in business push you need to have the right systems, you need to have the right methods, and they overwhelm people with information. I think I wish I would have just been okay using smaller tools, like continuously using an Excel spreadsheet for certain things. Yeah, I
Keeps you a
guess
little
in
more
general,
hands-on.
for sure. I
Yeah.
think that people get so systemized and try to be so like technology driven where they actually end up losing out on a lot of great experiences. So I guess really to put it in short would just stay in the weeds a little bit longer to gain a little more experience before developing strong standard operating procedures, if you will.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. It's funny because when I was talking about like my duplex and stuff, yeah, I use Cozy with that and Stessa with that. But when it comes to my syndications, I have an actual Excel spreadsheet with the deals that I'm an LP in, and I track everything in there, right? This is how much it was when the asset was purchased. Here's what, is coming in each month on the rent roll, what my cut is, just the whole thing, right? So that way I can have something I can physically look at and pull up on my screen and say, okay, this is where I'm at right now, and this is where we're going. Yeah, being able to manage it yourself a little bit, at least at first, and being hands-on and manually, like you've got a touch on it. It's a little bit more, I guess, intimate, right? Where you've got the hands-on experience, and it puts you in a better place knowledge-wise, so that when you do upgrade to another tool or feature, you know what's happening in the background already. Instead of it's calculating everything for you, but you know how to do it if you need to. If we go back to paper and pen because there's a EMP wipes out the grid, that's probably the end of the world anyway if that happens. But
for sure,
you'll be able to pen and paper these things because you got it. Okay, Kyle, next question of the final round is, do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend to someone that is just getting started out today?
Yeah, believe it or not, I would recommend anybody to get, and again, it's going to be tough to find group coaching, mentorship out there. And I'm not even saying I'm the person for people, but finding a coach or mentor will expedite your process from where you want to be to where you want to, like where you are today and where you want to go. Because again, they've made mistakes that you're going to pay for one way or the other. You can either pay someone to help you not see them, or you're going to find out yourself. And yes, all the information's out there. And everyone I tell this to, I was like, literally every single piece of information that you are going to run into is out there. It's just how long do you want to keep searching for it?
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in coaches and mentors, and not because I do coaching myself. I use them myself. I have many mentors and then coaches too. Like I pay them because it's an accountability thing for me. Masterminds as well. Like I love being in masterminds. I'm in 2 of them right now. And it's just one of those things that I feel like it's not so much that I'm being held accountable by them, but I'm holding myself accountable because other people are watching. And that's the way, to me, it just gets in my head like, okay, I need to. And it was the same way I thought about like when I was in the military too. I always thought to myself, you're always on parade. There's always people watching. So do the right thing. Right. So yeah, man, I love that kind of mentality. And a lot of people look at that as, oh, I don't want to pay for this. I don't want to pay for that. Like, look, you're going to pay for that education one way or the other. Either you're going to have somebody that's going to help guide you along the way and push you in the right direction, or you're going to go make those mistakes yourself and pay 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times what you would have paid that coach to help you out. So yeah, firm believer in that stuff, man. Okay, Kyle, the final question of the final round is, do you have a favorite business, investing, or real estate related book or podcast, or both?
I do. So I would say, and I just read it. I've got it, behind me. So it's not necessarily real estate related or business, but also both related. And it's called The Slight Edge. I don't know, have you ever read it, The Slight Edge?
I have not.
No, it's a great book. And believe it or not, it's about how getting the slight edge in life and business decisions and your relationship just in general. And I think a lot of people get really hung up on the intricacies of business. But again, I think there's so many pieces of like your personal relationship with your significant other. There's so many things going on in life that can get overbearing sometimes. They can get overbearing and start clouding your judgment and business decision. And this book talks about it. And it was great. It's a great book. I would recommend it to anyone. It's just by Jeff Olson, The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And it's great. It just goes over how to get a slight edge, get up earlier, sleep in a little bit longer, go to bed earlier at night. Just everything, little seeds that create plants in your brain. It's a great book.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad. I was going to ask you who wrote it, so I'm glad you added that in. Fantastic recommendation. I appreciate that. So that is it for the final round, Kyle. But I do have another question for you, and this is probably the most important question I'm going to ask you throughout this entire podcast, because my listeners are sitting here listening and they're saying, man, I'm getting so many golden nuggets, so much valuable information from Kyle Root here, and I want to know where I could find more information about him. Kyle, with that being said, can you share with us where people could find more information about you? Do you have a website, social media that we can follow? If somebody wants to check out your coaching program, where can we find all of this?
Yeah, so the best place for coaching is probably my website, which is kylejroot.com. Again, that's kylejroot.com. Instagram is KJ_root. I'm posting about 5 times a week on there, just my mindset, just real estate information, pushing out a bunch of free content. Shoot me a DM. I love meeting new people, chatting with people. So those are the best 2 places to get a hold of me and find me.
All right, fantastic, man. So I'll make sure I have all those links in the show notes to make it easy for people to copy and paste or click away. I just only ask that you don't do it if you're driving, okay? But hey, man, genuinely appreciate everything. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners? Anything that we may have missed?
Yeah, I just one last little round here is I keep looking at your little sign behind you that says work hard. And I think that's extremely undervalued in today's society. And sometimes your work ethic will outplay anyone that might be a little bit more swifter than you, a better salesman. Your hard work will win every single time. If you can work hard consistently and do the right thing, you're going to win. So I just think having the ability to work hard and do it consistently, and not only do something consistently, but make sure you have the right information is important. And yeah, just stay after it and good things come.
I appreciate that, man, because I just came back from a real estate conference. I was telling you about this pre-recording. And one of the things that one of the speakers said there is that the one thing that you cannot put a number on is your persistence, right? And that if you are persistent and consistent and you constantly strive towards your goals, nobody can stop you except for you. So I absolutely love the way that you put that. And then the other one, you probably can't read the rest of the words on here, but the other sign I have says, good things come to those who hustle. So
Nice.
I can't see the small words on top, but yes, that's why I have the work hard and hustle, but it says good things come to those who hustle. So I'm a firm believer in all of that, man.
Awesome.
Hey, Kyle, genuinely appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. This was fantastic. Learning about your story, what you've done in such a short period of time. You're 28 years old. You're financially independent. I absolutely love it, man. This was fantastic. Thank you again so much for talking with me today.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. And hey, to my listeners, I also want to thank all of you so very much for joining me and our special guest, Kyle Root, on the Average Joe Finances podcast. Go leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you liked about today's episode with Kyle. Aloha from Hawaii and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.
Thanks for listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast, your source for beating debt, saving money, and investing. Learn more at averagejoefinances.com.